I know I made some videos about exponential rhythms in the past, but I wanted to make a new video and combine basically all the old videos into one and maybe delete the old ones. So because now in Bitwig we have at different points certain possibilities for exponential rhythms or modulations that are kind of off the grid. And I want to show you all the possibilities. So we want to switch here to Bitwig Studio. Now I've already some kind of track here. It's just a pad sound. Nothing special. But we maybe want to add something to it that modulates this pad and gets a rhythmic feel to it and also changes the rhythm over time while starting on the grid and ending on the beat grid. And this is possible by using a ramp modulator here on the filter. This one. And we can activate here the synchronized modulation. And we have now 16th notes. And we have 4 16th notes here already as default value. And we can modulate here the filter. And also we have to activate here the loop. So we loop over and over again. And we maybe want to start here at 16th notes, which are 0.25. And we use a macro, and we call this macro modification. And we modulate here the speed by exactly the amount of 3.75, because 3.75 plus 0.25 are exactly 4. And we want to end up on 4. We want to start at 0.25 and we want to end up on 4. And now we can use this mod knob here to change the speed of this ramp modulator. Maybe change the direction of this. Maybe a bit better. And you can see we can flawlessly transition between the different speeds. And now we can go in here and paint in from the start of the clip, which is exactly here, and we dial in 0%, and we want to end up here by at 100%. And we dial slowly in here the modulation speed. So let's listen to this, how this sounds. And when we switch on here the metronome, it's like we start on the grid, then we slowly fade off the grid, and then at the end we are back on the grid. And in the mid parts here we are kind of in between, you know, in between the rhythm, and it adds this certain kind of glitchy feel, and it's kind of interesting sometimes. And you can also make this exponential, more or less. You can use here a curve. It's maybe not exactly exponential, but kind of. So you basically hold the fast speed longer, and then you are slowly adding here speed up until the end of the clip. So you can influence how long you want to transition. This way you have just a short sequence here at the start where you have a fast speed of modulation. At the end here it's more slowly. So this is something you can do. You can also remove this here and maybe use the mod here to change the modulation amount. So now we fade this in exactly 1. So now what we now have is that we have basically no modulation at all at the beginning here. You can see the filter is completely open. There's also no modulation happening. And then at the end, when the modulation becomes slower, it slowly fades in also the amount. With the new Bitwig version, you can also influence here, of course, the amount curve. So we maybe choose here logarithmic, which should add the amount faster at the start than the other linear mode. You can see we are already at 50%. We are not really here past the 24% of this length of this clip. So you get the modulation basically early on in this transitioning phase here. You can also use maybe exponential, which kind of delays the amount modulation here. You can see the amount is only at the last half here, over 50% in, so it kind of gets you an yeah, delayed modulation basically. So I really like to have here logarithmic. And maybe also change here yeah, modulation curve. Maybe turn this here around this way. Sounds. Or we can even go here maybe to 4 and modulate in the other direction by going minus 3.75. You can also use different values. It's not that important. So the ramp modulator is perfectly nice exactly for this, that you can apply here modulations to something and also change the modulations while staying on the beat grid. And there's another modulator you can use, and this is the LFO here. It's just called, or it's a beat LFO. The beat LFO is works like kind of the same as the ramp, where you have this speed knob here, but you can see it's not really a transition. We are blending between different rhythms. We have here our, I think it's also 4th note beat grid here, and then we are slowly blending in here 8 notes. As you can see here, the small details coming in. It's not really a change of speed. It's more like we are blending between different rhythmic modulations. So you can also use this here, of course, to modulate different. But it kind of sounds different because you blend in these other rhythms, and sometimes you have this triplet feel. So I really like to use the ramp for this kind of method, but also the LFO can be interesting as a modulation source. Okay, so the next one we can do is, or the next thing we can do is, we can try to trigger something with different rhythm. So instead of just having here one straight sound, we maybe can use the arpeggiator here and switch this to milliseconds. It's also a possibility. Or maybe use here or like a flux sound. So we can change here the arpeggio speed. But with this method, it's more like that you don't start at a grid rhythm, because we have here only milliseconds, so you don't know. You have to dial in the exactly amount of milliseconds here to have the speed of maybe 16th notes, right? And it also depends on the speed of your DAW, of your project, of the transport. But what we can do is we can utilize here also the replacer. So this is what I usually use for my node grid out plugin. So with the replacer, we can create nodes. And you can see here it's C3 and we have velocity 100%. And it triggers only when we have a sound. So we need the sound source, and I usually go for a test tone here. And you can hear the test tone because we have the mix at 100%. There's no generator inside. So when we go here with the loudness over this threshold, you can see we are triggering or generating kind of a node signal. So what I usually do is maybe go here to a certain frequency with the bandpass and go to maybe 1 kilohertz, 1000 hertz, 1000 hertz, maybe also here to 1K. And then we can modulate here this gain knob with the modulator. So we're using here also ramp synced, and we use the loop on. Maybe switch this around and just trigger this. Okay, this works nice. And then we use a chain maybe here. Put the sine into the chain, also put here the replacer into the chain, and now we have kind of a node generating signal, or node generating signal generator. I don't know how to call it. And maybe we add here some modulators to it, so we can change also here the key. And we want to change the key, of course, with the note we are playing in the clip here. So we're going for a key track. And we are modulating the key track here, or we are applying the key track here to this key thing, and we are applying exactly by 64 value or 64 notes, because this key track is exactly spread at 64 notes, and the middle note here is C3, which we are also dialed in here, C3, and now we can basically create the same note we are creating here, just modulated with the death tone. And maybe we should add here also a gate, because we want to have another gate. We need an ADSR, because we want to turn this off when we don't play the clip. So we only want to have playback when key is pressed, or when a key or when a note is played in the clip. So we maybe do the mix knob here. We use the mix knob. So we modulate the mix knob with this. So now it's basically quiet, and when we play back this clip here, we press a note on the MIDI keyboard, we can trigger this whole thing here. And now we can also use, of course, a macro and change the speed again. Maybe let's apply again minus 3.75. Call it mod. Oh, it's not triggering exactly, because here it's too fast. Maybe we switch the tolerance back, threshold and the hold. Okay, so now we can change here with the mod knob again our speed. And we can also change the notes here. So this is something you can build just with some devices here. And maybe the triggering is not perfect here, but you can play around with the tolerance here, hold value, and also the gain that is applied to trigger the threshold just right. And yeah, we're generating signals with this. So we can also go a step further. Maybe let's delete here the nodes and use an, how's it called? A node selector. Node FX selector. So we can put this into the node FX selector and maybe delete here also the modulation. Use an expression modulator and use maybe the pressure for the mod. So now we can utilize our stencil morph here. I have in front of me. You can't see it, but it's here. Okay. And yeah, we can change the speed now with the pressure on the keyboard. Yeah, I bet we can see it. So how hard I press basically decides how fast or how much modulation I apply to the ramp modulator. And what we also can do is we can duplicate this here multiple times and switch the node FX selector here to free voice, I think. Do it. It's not free voice. It's probably free Robin. Let's try this. So what you can do with this is you can use multiple voices with your stencil morph or with your MPE device. Can apply different amounts of pressure to each key and change for each voice the modulation. So it's like an MPE node FX, MPE node FX that you can use to trigger nodes, change the speed of the modulation, and create some kind of nice rhythmic effects. As you can see here, I'm using multiple layers, which means I'm using multiple voices at the same time. So this could be something interesting maybe for you for your project. I just want to show you this. So with this small preset or with the small device here alone, you can create interesting rhythmic effects, but when you put it into a node FX selector, you can also use it as some kind of MPE device, which is interesting. So we have three methods now to create off-the-grid rhythms, which is using the ramp modulator to modulate filter. You can also modulate, of course, the tool device if you don't like to filter your output. So you can use this technique on all kinds of devices, not only for the filter, so you can use it on a tool, so you blend in the sound at certain points. Maybe let's try it. So let's bring in here a tool device. Yeah, you can still see it. And we just copy this over to here, and then we copy this over to here. We have the same setup here. And instead of modulating the filter, I'm modulating here the volume. Let's go to 1, maybe switch this off and see if this is still intact. No, it's not. Maybe delete automation here. Bring this down, bring this up, and also bring this down by the amount of minus 3.75. And maybe also or maybe see. So we have also here something interesting. You can do out here, out high, low. So it slowly fades out. If you don't want to have the fade out, then just remove here the modulation for the amount. Just let the amount at 100%. Okay, so you can also apply this, of course, here to a pitch shifter if you want. That should be also interesting. Maybe think about the stereo spectrum, maybe pan something to the left and right pretty fast, or something along those lines. So you can do a lot of different things just with this modulator alone, and you can change the speed every time, which gets you this exponential stuff, or in between the grid events, in between the grid events. Okay, when we switch now to the polygrid, we have another set of options we can use. So let's call here the polygrid, and maybe use a sine oscillator just to trigger something. Maybe use the AD device. Maybe use an output, and the gates module. And you know that you can now trigger this here, right? Which gets you kind of a rhythm. And we can influence the rhythm by which this gates module operates by using, instead of the pre-chord here, using the phase in, the same as using the pre-chord, but now we can hook up in between here something and use, of course, a scalar. You can maybe add here a macro and modulate this here by an even amount. I don't know, maybe go to 8, so we need to add 7. And then you can change the rate of this. Modulate the rate. What do you call this? What? Want to change here the macro. Look at something like this. And of course it plays all the time because there's no gate, so we use a selector. And maybe we want to only play this when a gate signal, when a gate in is applied. Use your just a simple switch. So now it's basically quiet until we hit play or put in here note. So this is something you can do in the grid pretty easily. And of course, there are more options. You can also maybe push everything on the grid if you want. So when we modulate the scalar, we are kind of in the grid all the time. Because we are changing only the rate. You can say let's use a clock quantize here and use a trigger and synchronize everything to 16th grid. You want to make sure everything is straight on the grid. Maybe go to 32. You can see it's not, the transition is not so smooth. It's basically try to synchronize all the small little gates to this 32 grid trigger signal here. So there are all kinds of different ways to modify this, right? You You can also remove here the clock quantizer. You can maybe add here a pinch to this one to change the playback speed a bit. As you can see here, maybe at the blend, or how is it called? Bend. It's called bend. Everything you can imagine to alter this phase signal to change the playback speed of this gates module. Maybe you can also create some kind of different signal for the triggering here. And you can also apply the same ramp effects like I explained before here in the grid. So you can modulate maybe some knobs on oscillators and filters and so on. So there's another trick I want to show you quick, which I use a lot. I wouldn't say a lot, but sometimes I use it. Maybe for hi-hats. Maybe it's just a regular hi-hat sample here. Oh no. So instead of creating multiple triggers of this, you can just go for delay 1 and switch this here to without switch the sync off, and maybe apply a bit of feedback. And then you get these rhythmic effects here. Maybe you can change also the delay speed. Something like this, and then you can resample this. You have, nice little signal here. Go here to 4%. Let's resample. And I think in one of my last tracks I posted here on the channel, I completely used this only for the hi-hats. Also do nice tricks like reversing this. Also bouncing down here, maybe different versions with different speed settings. Out, and then you have quickly nice little stems that are off the grid and use to create interesting patterns. And I want to show you this here in a real life example. So in here there is a subfolder called heads.fx, and I have all these small little bits here of delay heads, where I just created like I did before with delay 1, some modulations, and resampled everything, put everything here into place, and it gets you this nice rhythmic feel at certain points. Maybe let's mute this here or solo this. So we have also here kind of a fade in. So you can apply this, of course, not only to hi-hats, you can use it for bass, bleeps, lead sounds, I don't know, drum sounds. It doesn't matter. It's the same. Workflow for every sound, and you can create nice little rhythms out of this, where you can spice up basically your project or your song. So the last trick for today's video is to delay notes on the chain. So when you have, for instance, here a sampler, and in the sampler there's a hi-hat, and you create probably a pretty straight pattern for it here, something like this. and you want to kind of bring in some groove, you can use here the playback drop down, enable groove, and maybe add your shuffle. Like you do. But you can also go for a note delay and switch the synchronization off here and go to the lowest setting, which is 10 milliseconds. And then you can delay all these incoming notes you have in this clip here. And you can modulate this with an LFO. Synchronize this here to 60. Just modulate this here as much as you want. Maybe too much. Maybe like this. So you can bring in groove, but just by delaying notes and also changing the timing of delay. And because we are introducing an initially 10 milliseconds delay, we can remove this with a time shift device. Time shift milliseconds minus 10. You can also go here on the negative. So when you, for instance, want to delay or push notes earlier, then you maybe go here to 30 milliseconds and the modulators here just with .20, and then you go also in the negative range over the bipolar setting. You have to remove this 30 milliseconds too, so maybe go for minus 30 here. So you basically stay on the grid and then you just move the notes earlier or later with the modulation. So you can create nice little grooves with this, and yeah, it's a nice neat trick. Okay. So that's it, I think, for this video. That's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like if you liked the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, of course. I have to say this every time. It's the YouTube rule #1. And I also try to update the description later on with all the timestamps for the informations in the video, and also my blog, where there is a blog post with every video I make. And also the timestamps for all the different informations in the video. So you can go to the blog post, exactly search what you need, jump to the video, to the exact timing position in the video, and get the information you need. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.